Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today I'll be talking about Epic Games. Are they the big bad or good of the gaming industry? Well, they're a company that's either seen as a savior here to bring us justice from Valve, Google and Apple, or a company that uses its position to fragment the gaming industry, turn back on promises, and actively harm gaming on Linux and indie developers. As a Linux user, I happen to be kinda biased here, so take my mindless ramblings with 16 grains of salt. So let's start with Linux support. Firstly, why not? Every time Epic has been confronted with this simple conundrum that directly contradicts the goal of Epic, they've brushed it off. It's ridiculous. You say you want to make gaming more available to everyone, but then neglect Linux users? Are we not a part of your everyone, or does that only apply to Windows users? I've always been a fan of impressive engineers and programmers, just like Tim Sweeney, but sometimes he is the dumbest, most idiotic person on the planet. Like when quizzed about why Fortnite doesn't run on Linux, even through Wine and Proton, he stated that if only we had a few more programmers. And my response to that is that Epic is a multi-billion-dollar company owned by the second biggest name in gaming, and they can't achieve the same basic-ass things that a small indie game studio can do, or that Epic themselves did with games like Rocket League. Generally, what? A few more programmers isn't the issue here. You are, and your ignorance against Linux. Like, if you're gonna lie, at least do it better, Sweeney. Because this is just insulting to anyone who loves Epic. But you may be thinking that they must have a better reason than just needing a few more programmers. Like it being difficult to build for Linux. Except for the fact that Unreal Engine and Easy Anti-Cheat both support native Linux and Wine. There is no excuse. They straight up won't flick a switch in their game engine that actively prohibits Wine from working with Fortnite. Next, let's talk about the most hated games launcher on the planet, EGS. Like genuinely, Tim, if you need to give away free games and discounts to get people to use your store, then there may be a bit of an underlying issue. If you really do want to add more competition to the space, then innovate. Because believe me when I say this, I'd rather use the EA app or Origin or whatever it's called nowadays than spend more time in your incomplete mess of a store and launcher. And they don't even give me the latest FM game for free. Let's start with an issue I alluded to earlier, Linux support. What does Epic gain from not supporting Linux? The opportunity to miss out on the handout gaming space? The chance to piss off all those bloody Linux users? What else? Tim once stated that open tools, libraries and platforms are critical to the future of the digital content ecosystem when donating 1.2 million to the Blender Foundation. But yet he still continues to go against his very own word and show that he doesn't believe that open source platforms are critical to the future. I mean, actions speak louder than words, and Tim's actions are very against open source projects. Because I mean, if you genuinely believe that statement, Tim, then why are you continuing to resist involvement with Linux until absolutely necessary? If you think open source projects are important for the future and don't just lie to even more of your customers, then support the most important open source project in human history, Linux. Or should I say Canada? Seeing as how you see installing Linux as a sort of equivalent to moving to Canada when one doesn't like US political trends. As if the idea of owning your own software and operating system is just one sick protest to the true, correct method of bowing down as massive companies like Microsoft continue to take and take and take more of our privacy. You said later in that tweet that we've got to fight for the freedoms you have today, where we have them today. And I couldn't agree more. Except that Linux offers more than just the freedoms of today, filled with the likes of Microsoft Recall, a false type of freedom. It offers what software should really be, truly free and open. The Epic Games Store struggles in more areas than just Linux support. It seems Epic has made it a strategy to copy Apple and release features late that the competition has had for years, and in Epic's cases, decades. There are so many things, big and small, that make switching between Steam and Epic feel like going back to the dark ages of application stores. Features lacking in the Epic Game Store range from all over the place, like social features, where a whole list of required features can be generated and scrutinized, like no gifting games to other users, no in-app messaging, no voice chat between users, no activity feeds to see how your friends are progressing in each game, or setting your status, like whether you should be viewed as offline or not, or potentially more pressing issues like input management for controllers, like how Steam has it with Steam Input. Why don't you, Epic? Even profile management. Like, how difficult is it to have profile pictures, Epic? Or even bigger issues, like the forums that Steam has had for as long as I can remember, that have such a massive impact on gamers' ability to achieve simple tasks and troubleshoot their experiences. Like, talking for myself here, I've been to the Steam forums for dozens of games over my gaming life for tons of issues, like scaling issues or performance issues or compatibility issues. Not only that, but without forums, it becomes difficult for gamers to suggest features to the developers. And it makes it harder for users to share their experiences and hear feedback. It's ridiculous that a company as big as Epic can't implement the same stuff into their store. Next, we have probably the most hated part of Epic's current strategy, and that is exclusives. Another example of how Epic is using their immense cash reserves to force a monopoly on the industry. It's a pretty new concept in the PC gaming space for companies to create deals with publishers for exclusivity on their stores. Personally, I find this absolutely disgusting. The idea of users being forced to use one store over another, not because that store is actually better, which I have demonstrated that Epic is most definitely not, but because a deal was made with the publisher. Realistically, the issue for me decreases if a company keeps their games exclusive to their own store launcher. Like, for example, Rocket League or Fortnite being on Epic Game Store exclusively is fine, it's your own game. But getting games from other publishers and other developers is pretty ridiculous. And it's just flat out anti-competitive behavior, and another video on its own. Furthermore, Epic's exclusives are harming developers, as their games fail to receive as much traction, only being available on the Epic Game Store exclusively. Just look at the sheer amount of games that have struggled to grow an audience on the Epic Game Store before being released on Steam, and gaining large masses of audiences and praise from that latter release, like Hades and Satisfactory, for example. By locking indie games into these exclusivity deals, Epic is harming the same group that they claim to be helping the most. Lastly, let's talk about Tencent, the company that owns Epic. They have constantly, over a period of years, used their power over Epic and the games that they own to ban users who speak negatively about Epic and themselves, and in some cases the Chinese government. This, plus their refusal to invest in proper support, makes dealing with Epic an absolute pain. For example, there are hundreds of Reddit threads all talking about people being inexplicitly banned on Fortnite, only for Epic support to give them the cold shoulder and ignore their inquiries. Stuff like this is what makes people choose Steam. It's just the path of least resistance, and Epic is most definitely not coming anywhere near that title. TLDR, Epic sucks.